Welcome to the Saturday Salon. It's Saturday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. The Saturday Salon has been going for 6 years as one of the most secretive podcasts in the world, but now we're opening up to the wider audience and you're listening in live as we speak. I'm actually trying to not pass out because with me today I have Eric, and Eric, I'm a huge fan of him. 15 years ago, he came out with the Lean Startup, and it really changed the language of entrepreneurship. And he gave us a very practical way of thinking and experimenting. You might know of the term MVP and so forth. But he's actually challenging us once again, not only like how to start a company and how to, do good in the world, but also how not to become evil when you get successful. And what I learned from reading Eric's new book, Incorruptible, Why Good Companies Go Bad and How Great Companies Stay Great, is actually you cannot start too early in the life circle of your company to think about how you will be when you become successful. Eric, welcome and good morning. How are you doing? And congratulations on your bestseller. Again,
Thank
you
you
did
so
it again.
much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Your book has been out since May 26. And I checked last night. I was just curious. Over 10,000 reviews of your book already at Amazon, probably more even today. How does it feel to be so ridiculous successful yet once again?
Well, I don't know. How you define success, I guess, is up to everybody. But I appreciate the sentiment. And, it is very gratifying. You work on a book, you never know if anyone's going to care at all, let alone have strong feelings about it, let alone share it with their friends, let alone, tell their company to buy it or anything like that. So, it's always a leap of faith. So, yes, certainly we're in the honeymoon phase where it still feels pretty good that people care at all. I'm pretty excited about it.
I'm so glad. Well, the first when I heard about your book, I thought, oh, Eric, man, ESG, purpose, mission, vision, really? I thought that was dead. But tell me, how did you come up with this idea of writing this book? And your book is not in a traditional business book, actually. The way it's written, there's no fine consulting language. I love the use cases, all the examples. It's a very practical book. Was that on purpose, that was the style of the book? And why like that?
Well, you already said it, because people have this expectation going in that this topic is a bunch of bullshit. So, and the thing that I'm proposing people should do, everyone knows to be impossible. So that was very daunting. This book took me a long time to write as I tried to figure out how can you overcome these two almost impossible liabilities. And at a certain point in the process, I had the realization that the fact that everyone knows it can't be done is actually a gift. It gives you far wider latitude to do whatever you want, since people, you can't make people any more skeptical. They already are. And so I felt a lot more free to say, okay, as a literary matter, how are we going to get people into this adventure? And I was like, well, because I think it's impossible, this book is actually not a business book at all. You buy a business book to do something that you think is possible. You think you can do. The book will teach you how to do it. Here, since everyone knows that this is impossible, it's much more of a mystery. Why? Why is the world the way that it is? And then, of course, as you get into the book, if this particular corruption that we're fighting against, if it's inevitable, why are there exceptions? And so I felt really free to play with the genre, play with the form, I think more than I otherwise would have, knowing that we were tackling a topic that people are skeptical about.
Well, Eric, there's so much we can dive into. I almost don't know where to start, but let me start somewhere. I'm a VC-backed Delaware company myself, okay? Let's start there. I signed the papers my lawyers gave me. I feel safe and ready. I'm out there doing my thing. Should I be worried?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you should be worried. And again, not because Eric says to be worried, according to Harvard Law School data, of companies that are venture-backed and that follow the standard governance, that is basically just follow the best practices, only 20% of founders will still be CEO even 3 years after an IPO. So yeah, if you think this is your life's work that you're embarking upon, then you're kidding yourself. And I start the book with a couple of stories of people who really thought they were safe, thought they were being protected by these so-called best practices. And I contrast a founder who was just beginning his journey, and he's kind of calling me, like trying to figure this out, with a founder who was at the end of his journey because he had been forcibly ousted from his company after making zillions of dollars for his investors. And I was trying to explain to this new founder, look, if you don't get the governance of your company right, no other decision you make is going to matter in the long run, because this is simply the reality of these best practices. They are designed to make companies weak. Anyway, he's listening to me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I got to go because I'm going to this event. I was going to a celebration of this founder who was at the end of his journey. And I'm explaining, look, there's like 1,000 people here. People have flown in from all over the country at their own expense to come to this event. I saw someone walking into the venue. I'm like, listen, that's someone who I know the founder fired. Can you imagine you get laid off by a CEO and you come back to celebrate him? Like, that is rare. Anyway, the new founder is like, mad respect, right? He's like, oh, this is amazing. That's the kind of company I want to build someday. And I'm like, my friend, you are not really listening to me. He doesn't work there anymore. This is not a party. This is a wake. We're here to mourn what's happened. And he's like, oh, wait, did the guy die? I'm like, no, he's alive. Did his company die? No, the company's. I said, well, then what are you mourning? I was like, what a good question. What an astute question. All of us who were there that day, we're not even really sure. We knew something has gone wrong. And I just feel like this feeling that there's something wrong in our economy is so pervasive today. You know, I've been telling people this story on book tour. You go out to dinner with a friend who recommends a certain restaurant. They say, well, I haven't been there in a couple of years, but it's really great. You go there, they take one bite of the food and they take their phone out. And you're like, dude, why is the phone out? Like, oh, just one sec. Yeah, sorry, guys. And they turn it around. This restaurant's been bought by private equity. I could taste it in the food. Like, what is this taste that we just feel all the time? All these products that are getting worse and worse all the time. It's as if there's something like an illness in the body of this system. And even though on that day at that party, we didn't know what to call it. In the years since, I have figured it out. And I realized that what is going on is we have built an economy loaded up with ways to make money without creating any value, or often even by destroying value. And we don't know what to call that because it's so pervasive, but our grandparents knew what to call it. They would have called it corruption, corrupt ways of making money. So anyway, this guy who I'm talking to about the party is like, look, I got to go to this event, but I'll call you back and try to help you later. He's like, look, but before you go, are you saying that's going to be me someday? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been trying to tell you this whole time. And he asked me the question that's kind of the kickoff for the book. Is it even possible to build a for-profit company that would be incorruptible? And I was like, look, good news, bad news. The good news is yes. Although everyone else seems to think this is impossible, I think it is possible. The bad news is because you signed the standard docs and you're following the best practices right now, you're making that outcome less likely for yourself rather than more. So anyway, I was like, I promise we'll talk, let's work on it tomorrow. We got that company onto a new and better way. But that's kind of the mystery at the heart of this book. Like, why have we built this economy where there are so many ways to profit by destroying value? And then what can we do about it?
Well, Eric, I appreciate the restaurant story because it's so true. And we all know a few of those restaurants in the Bay Area that have happened to. I grew up with a certain lens on what capitalism is. You are arguing in the book that actually we're the first generation that actually look at capitalism the way we do. Can you explain? There's something fundamentally wrong in the way we look at how to run companies, or how we think they should be run. Do I put it correctly?
Sure. Yeah. So what's interesting to me, so we live in the era of what's called shareholder primacy. And this is a legal doctrine that, oh, you're a founder. You think you're building a vital, beautiful organism that makes high quality products to be of service to your customers? Sucker. That's what you think? Oh, no. The legal doctrine is that no, corporations are nothing more than financial instruments designed to enrich their shareholders. That's all they are. So if you think you have a mission, you're kidding yourself. Your legal documents say your legal purpose is to maximize shareholder value. So you're full of crap. Yeah. So how, like today, if you talk to people about this idea, they assume, because that's what they've been taught, that this is some ancient pillar of capitalism, goes back to Adam Smith or whatever. Wrong. Absolutely not. This is a very young idea. The trees behind you in your window are probably older than this idea. Okay. for the vast majority of the centuries that there have been joint stock corporations, it was seen as obvious by everybody involved that they were too dangerous to be incorporated simply to serve themselves. Because they're like an illness, like a cancer. You know, when they get out of control, they grow without bound and without purpose. So in the 19th century in the US, for example, if you wanted to form a company, you had to declare what its public benefit was. You had to say, we're going to build a company to make a railroad that goes from point A to point B because that is beneficial to society. And you had to actually like write down, here's how it's going to be beneficial to society, or you couldn't form the company at all. And in the 19th century, if you were like the richest man in the world and you tried to borrow a bunch of money and take over some company so that you could change its purpose from make a railroad to enrich me and my shareholder buddies, that would have been considered a crime and the courts would void your charter. Okay. So this didn't change in Delaware, by the way, until 1899. Okay. So this is not like ancient history. There was a major fight over the course of the 19th century to democratize access to forming a corporation. It was called general incorporation. It was adopted by Delaware in 1899. Now, it still didn't, even after the advent of general incorporation in the 20th century, people still assumed that every company would be incorporated to do something specific. But over time, over the course of the 20th century, people started to get, the lawyers started to decide that the most convenient thing to write, like if you have a Delaware C Corp and I look at your charter, it'll say something like the first line of it will be the Acme Corporation is hereby incorporated to pursue, and it's like a Mad Lib. There's a blank line. You write in whatever you want. Lawyers say, and they've been saying now for almost 100 years, the best thing to write in there is any lawful act or activity. Any lawful act or activity. And unfortunately, starting in the 1980s, courts started to interpret any lawful act or activity as maximize shareholder value. So it's actually doubly wrong because any lawful act or activity, I always ask founders, call your lawyer and ask them, does any lawful act or activity include turning my customers into Soylent Green and eating them? If that ever should become legal in the future. And they're assuming that their lawyer will be like, no, obviously it doesn't include that. If you want, we can easily write an exception. Any lawful act except, murdering my own customers. But their lawyers won't say that. When you call your lawyers and ask them, they'll say, you never know what you might need to do. Maximum valuation comes from maximum optionality. And then we're like, gosh, why does nobody trust me? Well, maybe that's related. So, of course, it's even worse than that because now we interpret it as maximize shareholder value. So the reason I didn't want to write a book about ESG and purpose and all that stuff is people think that purpose is some kind of vague nonsense word, but it's not. Purpose is the legal thing that an organization must optimize for, that it is required to, every organization has to serve something. And so if you do nothing, if you just take the default best practices today, you will get a corporation that is only interested in maximizing shareholder value. Meaning if you think you are a mission-driven company, if you tell people our mission is to make a high-quality product, make customers' lives better, bring a little beauty into the world, solve inequality, solve climate change, whatever you think your mission is, if you have standard incorporation, then you're lying. You're lying to your employees, you're lying to your customers, and you're lying to yourself. You think that's your mission, but your legal purpose is at odds with it. And I give story after story after story in the book of companies where when these two things come into tension, the mission is the first thing to go. So don't have that happen to you.
You give so many great examples in the book. I like also the Philip Morris case, if Philip Morris came tomorrow and let's just play with the thought that they want to buy an AI company to monitor their conversations, I actually cannot refuse to sell to them, which is pretty insane.
It's crazy. I think most founders just do not really think this through until it's too late. And I'll give you the exercise I've been asking founders to do. I've been using this exercise as a hypothetical for years, many years now. And I sit down with the founder. We can do it right now. Everyone listening, you could do it yourself. You don't have to tell anybody, but just privately to yourself if you want. Who is the most evil company in the world? Okay, the company that no matter how much money they paid you, you would never go work there because you think they're up to no good. So everybody think you have a company. Now, you can substitute your own company in the exercise. My father's a pulmonologist, so I was raised that Philip Morris International is the most evil company in the world, but you could choose your own. So imagine that Philip Morris comes to you one day and says, I'd like to buy this company from you for $1 more per share than it's worth. Would you like to sell? Now, some founders will be like, well, what do they want to use it for? They're going to use it to sell cigarettes to children. Okay, that's the plan. How you selling? No, everyone's like, of course I'm not. Oh, for $1 per share, Eric, you're exaggerating. That's ridiculous. That would never happen. I say, okay, but are you aware that according to your own corporate charter that you yourself signed, you have a fiduciary duty to say yes to this monstrous acquisition? Everyone's like, that can't be true. You're exaggerating. I have to be like, call your lawyer and then call me back. And he said he was doing me a favor. He gave me the best practice documents. But even then, even after some people get to that point, they still say, Eric, you are exaggerating. This is not a realistic story. So it's okay. Before you reject this hypothetical, I want you to consider it from the point of view of the founder scientists of Vectura Corporation. Okay, Vectura was a inhaler therapies company. They were a university spinout. They had gone public, very successful company. They made, cures for COPD, asthma, those kind of things. So a healthcare company. And one day, the actual, honest to God, Philip Morris International tried to buy them. And Philip Morris showed up and said, look, we would like to buy the company for 165 pence per share. At the same time, a private equity firm had shown up, and they had offered to pay 155 pence per share. So 10 pence difference. So the board of Vectura had three choices before them. Option A, do nothing. Why does this company need to be sold? There's no problem that this transaction is going to solve. Just do nothing. A. B, sell to private equity for 155. C, sell to Philip Morris for 165. It only took them a few months because they felt like it was their fiduciary duty. They had no choice. They unanimously voted to sell the company to Philip Morris International. So you can see in real life, it was an exaggeration. It wasn't $1 per share. It was closer to 15 cents a share. You want to know what happened? It only took 3 years for Philip Morris to utterly destroy this company. They paid £1.1 billion to acquire it, and within 3 years, they had taken a $650 million write-down and sold the thing for piece parts. So it was an immense act of value destruction done in the name of profit. And that's kind of the stories in the book are these value-destroying practices that are supposed to be generating profit, but actually hollow things out and lead to their destruction.
But Eric, come on. As a founder, I just want to make it survive. If I am too critical in the beginning, no one will invest in me. You know that. If I have all sorts of rules and frameworks that are out of the ordinary, don't you hear that argument over and over again? I mean, the likelihood of even doing an exit or an IPO or even succeed, yet alone survive the first few years as an entrepreneur, very unrealistic. So am I not just thinking?
I hear that all the time, but not from successful founders. Okay. So because people who have not ever had a successful startup do not understand that this argument cuts the other way. Okay. Your odds of success are so catastrophically low doing anything new that two things have to be true. One, you should do whatever you can to maximize chance of success. And two, investors desperately need you far more than you need them because there are actually so few successful companies in the world. You just said that yourself. That's what's so funny to me about the people who give these objections. It's like, you yourself are telling me how incredibly rare it is for a company to succeed. Right. If you're an investor, you have to find one of those incredibly rare companies. Who has the leverage? Now, the reason why we don't understand this, first of all, most founders say they're mission-driven, but they have been indoctrinated into this idea that mission is a source of liability rather than a source of strength. But actually being mission-driven, the evidence shows dramatically increases your odds of success. So I would say you can't afford, even if you're just, well, I just want to raise money and be successful, you can't afford to throw away your one most important advantage. And two, we have been indoctrinated into the idea that investors are our superiors and we have to do whatever it takes to please them. And that makes sense because most founders spend most of their time trying and failing to raise money. So we just get used to being beggars. Oh, please, Mr. Investor, please give me money. Except the only rounds that get done are hot companies. Okay. So all of a sudden we go from the ugly duckling to the belle of the ball, and every investor wants to invest, and we still have that beggar's mindset. It's like, no, you finally have the leverage to do it the way you want to do it. So build the company you want to build. And last, look, I'm not going to shy away from this. This is a moral argument. I would do it whether it increases your odds of success or not. The fact that it happens to be that you can make more money by actually doing what you intuitively know to be right, I think is one of the greatest things in the world. So congratulations, good news. But people are like, I only want to do it if you can prove to me that it will make me. I can't prove anything to you, okay? If you think that being a sociopath is an acceptable possible outcome for your future, I can't help you in any way. But most people would rather die than be that. Well, here's your chance to prove it.
Eric, we have another 7, 8 minutes, and there's so much I want to ask you. But I was just thinking, are you up for a little bit of fun? Because, SpaceX, huge IPO, one for the books, and Anthropic, one of the companies that you also mention as, I would say a role model almost, like it's baked into the DNA of the company. And SpaceX mission used to be make sure that people have a plan B, right? So what do you think is going to happen with SpaceX now that they IPO'd? Will things change? And what about Anthropic? Just today, it was announced that they had to pull back a model, and some people said it was a kill switch from Washington. What do I know? But I'm just thinking, these incredible, powerful companies, what is playing out in front of our eyes? And it's very brand new. It just happened, within the last few hours. So I might not expect that you have the answer, but it's just a really interesting time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do profile Anthropic in the book, and I did play a very, very small role in the starting of the company in the beginning. So I know those guys, but I haven't been in touch recently. I mean, I certainly have no inside information about this current conflict. I feel bad for them. I think people, even the headlines say things like Anthropic chooses to, take this product off the market, but they had no choice. Anthropic is not the main character in this drama. This is an example of incredible government overreach by the United States government. And in any other era, every libertarian, small government, individual freedom person would be tearing their hair, be like hair on fire, outraged about the fact that this is extremely inappropriate use of government power. And I don't just mean this latest round, but this has been going on for a while now. And it just happens to be a very bizarre set of circumstances that the supposedly free market people in the US have all decided that they have to shut their mouths about this. I think it's frankly despicable. I can't comment on the details of what's in this mysterious letter that the government sent them because it's not public. Nobody knows. Sounds like it was a very vague set of concerns. And I refuse to believe that the people making these decisions are acting in good faith. They just don't seem to be. So I just feel like Anthropic's in a very difficult situation, no matter how you slice and dice it. And the contrast between the government's favored vendor going public while their disfavored vendor is being given this nonsense, and the rules being rewritten in real time to support people getting on the SpaceX gravy train. I just think that whole process has been super gross. So no, I think we live in a time of where corruption is being normalized left and right. And so, we can despair about that if we want, but my preference is to try to do something about it. And one of my goals with this book is to help people realize that they have more agency than they may otherwise realize. So the political arena is not the primary or even the most powerful place where corruption happens or where it can be fought. And of course, it is bad when it happens there. I'm not saying, but I just feel like we have a lot of attention right now on the question of public corruption. I think this question of corporate corruption is also extremely important. And again, we can work to reform the corrupt through activism and using other levers of power. I do talk about that in the book. But I think before we get to that, I would like us to spend at least a minute grappling with the question of what do we as leaders, what do we want? What ought we to want to do? And when I feel like it's a bit of an old-fashioned book that way. Like, I think that is a very important question. And when we grapple with that question honestly, we sometimes discover that we have more power than we thought.
I like that, Eric. I like that you're saying that we always have leverage. Do you want to touch upon briefly Elon Musk, trillionaire, the first of its kind, the IPO? Do you think over time we will see less mission and more evil?
I don't know. That situation is so crazy. I mean, look, I talk to other CEOs and they always
Mm,
say to me, like, yeah, if I could break the law with impunity, I could make a lot of money for my shareholders too. So
true.
I think that's one side of the argument that I understand.
Mm.
I think that, I think his mental health has suffered a lot from having so much money and power. It doesn't seem to me like it's been great. And I think the fact that he uses his power, has used his power recently, like, to like kill people, like to cut off vital aid to people who then die. Like, I just think that is how history is going to remember this era. It's a very, very unfortunate. On the other hand, um, Elon puts the lie to so much of our elite discourse. And I just think that that is really interesting. So, for example, modern corporate governance best practices are supposed to be about value creation, but they are all against Elon. Those people hate Elon and always vote against him all the time. And he's like, what? You can't really vote against me. I'm creating value for you. I've created more value for you than anybody. You got to get on board. And you see, like in the SpaceX filing, a bunch of endowments and universities have decided to just give up their principles and go all in on Elon because that's where the value creation. I just feel like he forces people to choose. It's like, do you have principles or was it all about the money this whole time? And I think in his like single-minded pursuit of a very narrow range of human values, he puts the lie to so many people who previously claimed to be principled. And I can't say you got to hand it to him because I think I'm doing that at great cost, but I do think that's an interesting part of the story.
I do think it's a very interesting topic of the day, and it just fits perfectly well into your narrative today or what you're teaching us or reminding us of. One last question, Eric. Anyone listening to this, if they only have 30 minutes after this conversation, what should they go and do first besides ordering the book? Read it, for God's sake, read it. Should they read their charter? Should they talk to their lawyers, change the investor terms? Or is it just too late? Do you have to like close down the company and start all over again? Or what can you actually do right now if you have started a company, but you might be early? Can you do anything? Or is it just that ship has already sailed?
Yeah. Let me give you 3 very concrete things that you need to do. Okay. The first is you have to decide what your corporate purpose is. I know you think that you don't have to decide this, but it will be decided for you. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice, as the song says. Okay. So you have to decide this. I recommend you choose to be on the side of human flourishing. Okay. I give an economic and moral argument for this in the book. You can judge for yourself. But if your values are different than mine, fine. But whatever they are, you need to encode them. So, for example, if you're in the U.S., that you can encode those values in your corporate charter with a simple 2-page filing in Delaware. It couldn't be easier. It's called the Public Benefit Corp or PBC filing. Extremely easy thing to do. If you haven't done that and you claim to be a mission-driven founder, you are kidding yourself. You should definitely do it. Second thing is we have to operationalize this purpose, okay? It has to be part of your management system. And I'll just give you the very short version of how we do this. The first step is to identify our fiduciary commitments. Who would you put ahead of your own self-interest? Who are you willing to sacrifice for? In the book, I say, who would you rather die than betray? You tell me it's only shareholders? Fine. Enjoy being a sociopathic and extractive company. I hope you prosper. But for the rest of us who say, wait a minute, but I care about my employees too. I care about my customers too. Great. Write it down. Make it part of your management system. Align it to your business model, track it with your metrics, and make sure your culture is aligned to that thing. That's the leadership challenge. And then the third thing is we have to address the structure of the corporation itself. For example, we have to bind the directors to this purpose or they will betray you eventually. So a simple thing you can do, there's like doctors have to take the Hippocratic Oath. Make your directors take a director's oath to support the mission. And obviously there are more dramatic things you can do than that. For example, you could do you could build the Purpose Trust or go the Novo Nordisk route. But whatever you do, make sure you solve the problem that your directors be accountable to the mission. All right. Thanks so much. This was really fun. I got to run.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Have a wonderful Saturday. And once again, thank you so much. And thank you for writing such a timely book for all of us. Thank you, Eric. See you soon, my friends.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you so much.